Hi, welcome to Historic Eats, where I recreate recipes from the past and share the history of how they came to be. Well, it is Christmas time, and I would love to share with you a recipe from our neck of the woods that's so popular at Christmas. It's the Clothespin Cookie, also known as Lady Locks. This is a delicious cookie that's also served for other special occasions like weddings and graduations. This recipe dates back over 100 years ago, and like the other recipes I've shared, it has an origin story worth knowing. Everything has a history, including your food, and I would love to share with you more recipes from the past and tell you the story of how they came to be, so click subscribe. This cookie evolved from a German pastry, and we have abundant German heritage here in Ohio and Pennsylvania, which is what makes this cookie so popular in my region. Now, the invention of Crisco in 1911 gave way to the version of the cookie that we are familiar with today. Clothespin cookies resemble a cream horn, but they're different in that the pastry of a cream horn is flaky, whereas the pastry in the clothespin cookie has delicate, tender layers. And this is because of the Crisco. The moisture content in the Crisco creates steam that puffs up the pastry, and it maintains those delicate layers, but they remain tender. The filling in the cookie is also unique. It's not rich like buttercream or royal frosting, but rather it's only mildly sweet, and it's very delicate and much lighter. So these cookies are always one of the first ones to disappear off of the cookie table at weddings. Yes, the cookie table, a much loved Ohio, Pennsylvania tradition. So follow along with me as I make the clothespin cookies. So to begin, mix 1 cup of margarine. And yes, I did say margarine. You don't use butter. This is what was popular at the time. And again, it is what makes the shell more tender, whereas the butter would make it a little flakier and drier. So I have 1 cup of margarine, and to that I'm adding 1 cup of Crisco. And this is butter flavored Crisco, but you can use plain also. So beat that well until it's completely uniform. Now take a 1/2 cup of the mixture and set that aside. The remainder we're going to divide into 3 sections and try to keep them as uniform as possible. You can measure it. It's technically a 1/2 cup each. But this will just be for spreading on the dough, so if one's a little bigger than the other, it won't make much difference. And the 1/2 cup that we measured out is going to go into the dough. In a large mixing bowl, add 3 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of sugar, whisk that together. In a separate container, mix 1 1/4 cups of cold water and 2 egg yolks only. And just beat them until they're mixed. And the 1/2 cup of margarine and Crisco we're going to add to the dry mixture. And begin cutting that in on low speed, and then slowly add the egg and water until a soft dough forms. So I've added all of the water and all of the egg yolk, and it is too wet to form into a dough. So this is where you begin adding flour about 1/4 cup at a time. Okay, so that looks great. It will hold together. Okay, so that did the trick. I added a total of an additional 3/4 cup of flour to get it to come together into a ball. I'm going to flour my surface here and just turn the dough out onto it. And I'm just going to turn it in the flour a few times. And next, I'm going to get some wax paper. And I'm going to move the dough onto a plate. So I'm just going to cover this with some saran wrap. And this is going to go into the refrigerator for a minimum of 1 hour. Not the freezer, just the fridge. And remember the 3 portions of Crisco and margarine that we made? Leave these out on the counter, and we'll be revisiting these to spread on the dough while it's cooling. So these can stay out. This goes in the fridge. It's been 1 hour, so I just took this out of the fridge. And on a well-floured surface, I'm just going to roll it out to about a 1/2 inch thick. And try to make it into a rectangle. So that's about 15 inches by maybe 10 inches. And then take one of the parts of margarine and Crisco and you just spread it out edge to edge. And then you fold it up in thirds. And back in the fridge for 1 more hour. So if when you're rolling it out, you see some of the margarine peeking out, just dust it with flour so that it doesn't stick to your surface or to your rolling pin, because it will start to ooze out these last couple times that you roll it out. I'm going to fold it in thirds one more time. And this time it needs to be in the refrigerator for a minimum of 2 hours before we can begin rolling it out into the cookies. So this is a good time if you want to leave it in the fridge overnight. This is a good time to do it. If you're trying to do it on the same day, just make sure this last time is 2 hours in the fridge. So I'm over here at the stove, and I have 1 cup of cold whole milk and 3 tablespoons of flour, and I'm going to heat it over medium-low heat until it thickens, and you need to whisk continually. So I've just been cooking and whisking this on low for almost 2 minutes, and I don't know if you can tell, but it is very thick. Not quite to pudding, but almost. I'll give you an idea. So I'm going to move this to the refrigerator because it needs to be thoroughly chilled before I add the remainder of the filling ingredients. Next, I'm going to start my filling. So I'm going to begin with a 1/2 cup of Crisco. To that, I will add a 1/4 cup or 1/2 stick of margarine. Also another 1/4 cup or 1/2 stick of butter. And 1 cup of regular granulated sugar. With the whisk attachment, I'm just going to begin blending this, and I want to break the sugar down, so that's why I'm using the whisk attachment instead of the regular paddle attachment. The other option for the filling is you can do a 1/2 cup of shortening and a 1/2 cup of butter, but if you do increase the butter and get rid of the margarine, it will definitely have a more prevalent butter flavor, and I really just like the delicate nature of the filling, so I prefer just a 1/4 cup of butter and a 1/4 cup of margarine to the 1/2 cup of Crisco. So I'm going to go ahead and get this started. So I mixed that for about 2 minutes, and now I'm going to add just a splash of vanilla, not even a 1/4 of a teaspoon. I'm just giving a little tiny bit. And the milk flour mixture that was in the refrigerator is well chilled, so I'm going to go ahead and add that now. And it's going to be really pasty, that's okay. And I'm going to go back to mixing this on high speed. It's going to run for quite a while because you want the sugar granules to break down. So your mixer may be running for several minutes, and then you're going to taste test it and see if you can feel any sugar granules. If you can, just keep mixing it until it's completely smooth. So this has been mixing for just shy of 5 minutes, and it is perfectly smooth. No more sugar crystals. So I'm going to put this in the refrigerator until it's time to fill the shells. So I'm wrapping my clothespins with foil. These are the old traditional wooden round clothespins, and actually these are pretty hard to find. You might be able to get them on Amazon. Something that you can use in place of them would be like a 1/2 inch wooden dowel rod, or you can also get forms online, baking forms for them. But I do recommend wrapping them in foil. You can cook them directly on the wooden clothespin, but I have found that sometimes they come out great and sometimes they come out tasting like the clothespin. So in order to avoid that, I'm just wrapping them in foil. So my dough has rested and chilled for over 2 hours, and I'm going to divide it into quarters. And I'm going to keep the other 3 sections in the fridge while I roll out one section. So now if you can see all of the layers of the margarine in between, and that's what's going to give it that puffy layered effect. Okay, so I'm going to begin rolling this out, and I'm going to try to get about a 12 by 12 inch square. And this dough is really elasticy. So once it starts getting thinner, it is going to want to shrink back a lot. So just be patient with it and just take your time. And add flour wherever you see the margarine peeking out. If it starts sticking to your mat, just cover it with flour. Now I need to cut it into strips, and ideally is about 6 inches in length and just under 1 inch in width. Start by cutting these in half. And a pizza cutter works great for this. Okay, I have my oven preheating to 375 degrees with a rack set in the middle. And now I'm going to just start wrapping these strips around the clothespin. Just start and keep it snug against the clothespin and just roll it right over top of the end. And you're overlapping just a little bit. When I get to the end, I just fold under that point and then just kind of press it into itself, and then put the seam side down on parchment paper lined cookie sheet. And I cut these a little big, so if you're wrapping them and you have one that's way longer than another, you can just pinch it off where you want to pinch it off at and set that dough aside. You can re-roll it one time to get additional cookies out of any extra dough. So here they are, all ready to go into the oven. That's about 25 of them, but I have a good section of scraps over there that I'll probably be able to wrap 6 more cookies with. So the oven just beeped, it's 375. These will go in for 10 minutes.
The Clothespin cookie, or Lady Locks, have been Christmas time favorites, much like their Austrian predecessor, Schommele. Nearly 300 years ago in Austria, a delightful cream-filled patisserie was born. Puff pastry was rolled into conical forms and filled with fluffy egg whites or meringue, which inspired their name, Schommele, meaning foam rolls. The Germans had their own namesake for this pastry, Schillerladen. Stories have it that the acclaimed German artist Johann Christoph Friedrich von Schiller was depicted in a famous portrait with his blonde curls perfectly illustrated. These curls, much like impeccable Victorian women's hair, are said to resemble the pastry, so the Germans affectionately refer to them as Schillerladen. About this time, Germans began immigrating to America and brought their dessert with them. Some of these were Mennonites, part of the Pennsylvania Dutch. They settled heavily in eastern Pennsylvania and then expanded into Ohio. As new ingredients came onto the market, substitutions like margarine and shortening came about, and sweetness was added to the cream. The manner of rolling the pastry dough over a clothespin gave them the nickname Clothespin Cookies, but most Pennsylvanians still refer to them as Lady Locks. Today, they grace Christmas cookie trays and wedding tables as a perfectly sweet, delicate delight. Now on to enjoy the Clothespin cookie.
Okay, I just pulled these out of the oven. I left them in for just a few more minutes, probably because I made them so big. But you can see the edges are just starting to get golden brown. That's how you know that they're done. And if you flip them over, they're just a nice delicate brown on the bottom. They just need to cool a little bit on the pan, just a few minutes until they're cool enough to handle the clothespin, and you pull the clothespin out and let them cool the rest of the way on a cooling rack. While those are cooling, I'm just going to fill my pastry bags. So I have a pastry bag with a pretty large tip on it. You could also just use a freezer bag and cut the corner off of it. So these are well chilled and I can begin filling them. Let's put the tip right in there. You just watch for the cream to come to the other side. And finally, I'm just going to give them a little dusting with powdered sugar. It's snowing. These are beautiful. I cannot wait to try one. If you are going to freeze these, don't put the powdered sugar on them. Just put them directly in the freezer, and then after you thaw them, then powder sugar them. But we're going to be enjoying these right away. These are so good. You're going to need 10 dozen of them. Well, thank you again so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this recipe and enjoyed learning about clothespin cookies, and I hope you whip some up yourself because they are delicious. I have more recipes in the works, so be sure to click subscribe, and I wish you all a very Merry Christmas.